Welcome, everyone. So I'm going to talk about 4 tips for husbands to get more involved in NFP. And Monica's here to remind me of the 4 things that I've written. So this is actually, sorry, I don't know if you see this video first before our other video. My name is Renzo. This is my wife, Monica. We are what do you want to call us? The founders?
I call us founders.
We are the founders. The mic's in front of me. We are the founders of 𝗕𝗂𝗴𝗵𝗲. It's a marriage and family ministry, and we are also the hosts of Pre Cana with the Pope, and both of which is a podcast. Sorry, not a TV show or a game show. And our goal is to restore confidence in marriage and family life. So we do that through our website, 𝗕𝗂𝗴𝗵𝗲.com, as well as Pre Cana with the Pope. So I'm shaking because I'm so much passion. That's how passionately I feel about this. So Monica is going to just make sure I stay on track with the 4 tips that I have. And this is from an article I wrote a couple of years ago. But 4 tips for men, for husbands that are to help them get involved with NFP. Because a lot of times it feels like NFP is just our wives' job, that it is their job to track. It is their job to tell us when things are good to go, when it's a no-go, when it's a maybe go, but I'm not sure. So don't put that all on me. And unfortunately, like NFP could end up being a lot. This is good that you're laughing. So in case no one else feels like it's funny, no, that way they feel like they're laughing with other people. But just in case, but I know there's times where NFP, we think that NFP is going to be good for our romance and good for our relationship. But if implemented, if it's implemented only on one side, and the husband just feels like his job is only to ask, is it a yes or no today? It could actually be detrimental towards your marriage if you don't implement it correctly. Sorry, I'm going to put my hands down under the table so I don't keep. So the first tip is that you have to, as a man, you have to engage in the communication. That means you have to ask not just on, when the fertile period is coming up, whether it's a yes or no. I think it's an important reframe for guys to understand that we are always fertile. So it's always like a yes on our part, it's always a no on our part because we are fertile. So I think it's important because our wives know our fertility, they know that we're fertile. It's important for us to also ask about our wives, like what signs are happening, where are they in their chart? Where are they in their cycle? And it may seem odd, but it shouldn't, because this is your spouse. Like, you should know her. You should know what things she's looking for. You should know if there's any irregularities in her cycle. Like, you should know her health. In the same way that if I were to ever have to take Monica to the doctor, right? I would know what symptoms she's having for whatever thing. Cause like, I know her that well. And you should strive and this is my belief, and I feel very strongly about this, but I think as a husband, you should strive to know your wife's cycle that well so that you could even speak to a doctor and like, hey, yeah, she was having this, she was having this, she was having this. It shouldn't just be just her. And that only really comes through communication and being willing to ask questions. So yeah, making sure that you are involved in the tracking in some way. And even if and I think one thing that's worked for us is getting to the point that I don't have to ask her if it's a yes or a no day. I have to ask her just what signs she's seeing, and I can interpret that. So even if it means you have to come to learn a little bit more about whatever method of fertility awareness she's practicing, fine, then do that. Try to learn as much as you can about it, understand what the signs mean, so that she could speak to you in that language. And then you guys have a new language of communicating that isn't just like, oh, yes today, no today. The second one is and that communication should then always lead to communication about whether or not you as a family are ready to have and are ready to add to your family, or if you're continuing to avoid, because that should be a conversation that's happening well before you get into the bedroom, because you don't want that to be something that's in the back of your minds, or that you end up bringing up in the moment or afterwards. So that's something that's the communication that should be happening before as well. So along with knowing the signs and along with knowing what her chart says, you should also be understanding, like, okay, where's her heart at? How is she doing with the current amount of kids that we have, or how is she doing with in her career, or whatever anything else that she may be thinking. You want to know her heart as well, not just wanting to know the signs and if we can have sex or not. And that starts with communication and being willing to be the one to ask the questions. Making sure that you're asking them gently, because some of them may be super sensitive topics or things that she may not be ready to fully share yet, and that's okay. That's something that you will work on over time, and it's something that your marriage will get better at. But being willing to engage and being willing to engage in those conversations and having those hard conversations will ultimately help you be more involved with the whole process of NFP. The second part is really taking responsibility for the choice, and this kind of goes with communion, but this kind of goes with communication, but taking responsibility for the choice of whether we are avoiding pregnancy right now, or if we're trying to achieve, or if we're trying to whatever. But understanding that this is not just on her. This is not fully on your wife. This is not fully on her fertility and her signs. This is all her fault. Because a lot of times as guys, you feel like, well, I can't have my needs met because of she's misreading her signs, and this is not fair. And when are we going to be able to again? That's not the way this should be working. Like, it is not completely on her. This is a joint decision you're making, and really being willing to take on the responsibility of being romantic when it is that time that you're avoiding, or taking the responsibility of, like I said before, like I need to know my wife's heart to make sure that we are on the same page together, or taking responsibility of, you know what, tonight a back rub is just a back rub, because even if we can have sex tonight, I'm going to make sure to let you know that I love you for you and not because you're a means to an end. Taking on that responsibility will lessen the burden on her shoulders that she feels. And I know that the most wives feel every single time they have to tell their husbands no. They feel that responsibility, like, oh, it's because of me. It's because I'm reading these signs wrong. You know, what if I'm doing this to her? What if I read the signs incorrectly and now we're not able to have sex for an extra week this time? Just all the things that go on in their heads. We can lessen that if they know that, no, he loves me regardless. I'm not a means to an end. He's not going to get upset with me. A back rub is just a back rub. Those are the parts of responsibility that I think men can take on in NFP, in implementing NFP in your marriage, so that you can lessen that burden on your bride. The third one is really embracing chastity. And I know that might be hard to reconcile, because I know for many of us, chastity was something we were talked about when we were in high school, and before, when we were dating, when we were courting, talking about, don't have sex before you get married, but really letting chastity transform your marriage, because every time you feel a desire for your wife, it is a very good desire, but it should not be a desire that controls you. So there will be times when, whether you're avoiding or not avoiding, where you want to have sex with your wife, and that becomes an all-consuming desire. That's not okay, right? You got to think of the desire to love your spouse, similar to in the Old Testament when Moses sees the burning bush, and he talks about how the bush is on fire but not consumed by the flames. You could be on fire for love and romance for your spouse. Like, you should want to be with your bride, but you should not be consumed by that flame of desire. You shouldn't be only desiring her and, oh, I can't wait till we can finally have sex again. I know we're avoiding, and it's what day? Okay, on day 17, we're going to be able to do this. Like, that should not be, because then she just feels like, okay, you just care because you just want to have sex. And that should not be what's happening. It should definitely be you care because you love me. You want to know my health. You want to know what the good for our family. But because you are a man who's mastered chastity and has that self-mastery, and is free to love their spouse because you have that self-mastery, she will want to be more romantic with you, because she can see you as a bush that's not consumed by a burning bush, not consumed by flames, that you are on fire for love for her, but that is not a fire that's preventing you from seeing her as she is, and understanding that she's not a means to an end. Because she said she can't have sex today, that doesn't mean the romance suddenly dies for the next 2 weeks. But she said, though, okay, fine, then we're going to do these things instead, which leads into my next one, is intimacy. Looking to increase intimacy, especially during moments where you're during periods of avoiding, making sure that, okay, we're avoiding sex during this period of time because we don't feel like our family is able to add to it. We are able to add to our family yet. Fine. I'm going to lean into the intimacy. I'm going to learn her love languages. I'm going to learn the things she likes, and I'm going to do them. My wife is an acts of service person, so I try to really clean up around the house, really help with the chores, really lean into the things that I know she feels love through. especially during the times that we are avoiding sex, because I don't want her to feel like the only times that I turn up the notch on my helpfulness or my lovingness in the home is only when, like, yeah, I know it's going to lead to sex later. Understanding that intimacy means more than just sex. A lot of times for guys, sex equals intimacy, but sex is intimate, but sex does not equal intimacy, right? Understanding her. Maybe you have a wife who just likes to talk about her feelings, likes to talk about her day, likes to just share everything. Then you need to listen. And that needs to be something that you add to everything you do as husband and wife, right? You gotta lean into the things that you know she loves to do, that she wants to do with you, especially during the times where you're avoiding having sex because you cannot add to your family yet. And increasing that intimacy will lead to a better sex life, a better implementation at NFP in the future. But it really takes men to step up, start with the communication, take responsibility that this is your shared fertility, this is something you're doing together, embrace chastity. And that means that if you have any porn addiction, any masturbation issues, that has to be worked on too. Because a lot of times you may feel like, well, I have this sexual desire, this temptation in me. What do I do during these periods of abstaining? St. John Paul in Love Responsibility would say, first, we have to convince men that they're not going to combust because they aren't able to have sex. He doesn't say the word combust, but he talks about convincing men that they don't need to gratify every desire that they have. And then lastly, you have to increase intimacy with your spouse, because ultimately NFP should lead to greater romance, a greater sex life, a greater marriage altogether. But we really, as men, have to step up and really embrace the difficult parts of it and not let this be something that's just fully on our brides. So thank you guys so much for listening. It was fairly off the cuff. I hope it didn't, I hope it was okay. I hope I hit all the points.
You hit 4.
I hit 4. I said 4. I did 4. But so thank you guys for listening. Please rest assured of my prayers, or both our prayers, but especially husbands. I'm very passionate about this as I shake the table and hit things. But I do know that men can, if men can embrace this well, these 4 things especially well, they can revolutionize what marriage is, in our church, in our families. And I think that can be very transformative for the world. So rest assured of my prayers, and we will see you. If you haven't seen our other video on, what was the other one about?
NFP is not birth control.
NFP is not birth control. Be sure to check that out, and enjoy the rest of the videos here. Take care.